Hello and welcome to the What's the Story podcast. I'm Jarlath Cowan.
And I'm Joe Hodgson. Each week we'll be focusing on the stories that matter to you. Stories about the people and places that make Tyrone so special.
The What's the Story podcast is brought to you by the Northwest News Group, who also print our much-loved newspapers, the Ulster Herald, Strabane Chronicle and the Tyrone Herald. Enjoy the show. This week I'm speaking with Joe Hodgson, a guitarist from Ballymagorry who recently released his second solo album, Fields of Redemption. We talk about his musical journey from the early days growing up in Tyrone to his time spent in London playing in various different bands to returning home where he found himself as a solo artist. We also talk about his debut album, Apparitions, and a short film which he is currently working on, which is based on his latest album. So, Joe, the last time we were speaking, you were preparing to launch the album in the Fir Trees in Strabane. So, how'd you get on?
Yeah, it was a great night. It was on the 13th of June. Basically, we invited loads of friends and some local press, and we showed a short film which is based on the album. There are 15 tracks in the album, and we made a music video for each track. It's sort of linked by a narrative, and it comes out in the form of a short film.
So, in opposed to the traditional sense of like a live performance, it was more like a showcase?
It was a showcase for the album, yeah. And it's just decided I wanted to do something a bit different, because I don't know if many artists would do, like, I suppose a video for each track, and then put it in the form of sort of a narrative as well. And it was we did 8 conventional music videos and 7 AI, so which was quite an interesting thing to do, But I think it turned out pretty good in the end up,
That's definitely something different than, as I said, the usual just straight up live album launch. So the album itself, what's it called again?
Field of Redemption.
Field of Redemption. How long was the whole process of recording it?
It actually took quite a few years, because I released my first solo album, Apparitions, in 2020. And after I'd finished promoting that, I began writing a new album. And the last thing I wanted to do was repeat myself, so I was pretty ruthless with material. And in 2022, I actually ended up scrapping the whole album's worth of material for that reason. Then I had a bit of a catastrophe here in the house in Ballymagorry with a burst pipe, and the whole house was destroyed, which meant it took about 18 months to fix the place up, and so I had nowhere to record. So that kind of put the whole thing back. But once we got going with the recording, it was done about a year or so, and then the mix took a few months after that.
All home recorded then?
It wasn't all. I recorded my guitars in my own studio, but I used musicians from all over the world. So, like I said, the rhythm section they recorded in London. Then I had a percussionist who was in Brazil. I had a horn player who was recording her stuff in Germany. And I actually worked with the Czech Philharmonic as well. So they were recording live in Prague. And how we did these sessions where we do them over Zoom, So we would actually see the performance as it was happening. And they've got this great, the software now where you're actually hearing it in real time, So you're able to make comments and all, and not that you have to make any comments with the Czech Philharmonic, but yeah, it's great. It's a great process,
Brilliant.
Very, very
Sounds
exciting.
interesting with the Zoom. I didn't realise you could go that advanced with it.
You can, yeah. It's quite amazing. We recorded this string quartet, the Brookspear Music String Quartet. They were in a studio in Warwickshire. I remember that. There was another one we did live on Zoom, And, we were able to say, they were asking us, we happy with this? And everything was, and the sound was incredible, and all in real time with no delay,
Brilliant. And you were saying there just before we started too that now following the release of the album, there's a film coming alongside it. Is it sort of based loosely on the music as well, or what?
Yeah, well, the short film is actually, as I was saying, it's basically 15 music videos for each song. So the music is exactly the same as you'll hear it on an album, although the songs are in a different order to go along with the narrative. We've got a narrator who talks in between some of the tracks, and so it's exactly the same music-wise from the album, but it's just a slightly different concept. The songs are moved, and there's a different sort of narrative going on,
And in terms of that, is it like actors or?
Yeah, well, the videos we did, we got a couple of actors in who were in quite a few of the videos. Of a local girl called Emma Duffy, who's a fantastic actress, and then it was a stroke of good fortune. This guy called Hugo Nicolau, who's actually a good friend of mine and was in a video of mine on the first album. he's gone on to great things since. He's just been in a film directed by Johnny Depp and was acting alongside Al Pacino and stuff. So I saw this and I phoned him up and I said, "Hey, Hugo, you fancy coming to Ballymagorry again to do a video?" And he goes, "Yeah, man, when?" So he was in 3 of the videos, which was fantastic. And the narrative process, then we ran it into the AI videos. Mm-hmm. I continued that to the end, and then we came back to the very last video, to like a conventional video, and the whole thing just told a story. So
in terms of working with AI, like what way does that work? I mean, do you just feed in like a story or like a concept for like sort of a vision, or
we come up with a storyline? And I was working with this fantastic young guy in Germany called Nico Fry, and it's his speciality. He makes these AI videos. So we tell him the story. I don't know the process he does. Well, obviously he feeds it and feeds the story and comes back. And it's a bit of back and forth. It was very painstaking work because the AI is a bit, you ask for one change to be made and also everything changes.
Trial and error kind of thing when it comes to AI.
So we're trying to replicate the characters of myself and Emma. So like occasionally the AI would distort the characters would look different. So it was a lot of back and forward. I think we did as good as we could with the technology because there are still limitations. Yeah. You can't make every frame look exactly like the person you're doing, but it was very, very challenging, and it was a lot more challenging than doing the conventional videos,
So previous to now, that was your second solo album. Were both recorded back home here in Ballymagorry?
Back, as I say, all the guitars I've recorded here. And I've got a home little studio here, yeah.
And then previous to that, you were in London, I believe?
I was in London for like over 20 years, playing in various bands, touring, gigging. Like I made my life purely in London as a musician, I was gigging 3, 4, 5 nights a week in pubs, clubs, little small festivals, supporting different acts, whatever, So yeah, it was full-on music for over 20 years over there,
Brilliant. So I want to, I suppose, go back and make our way forward from there. So from a young age then, what age was when you first picked up the guitar or took an interest in music?
First picked up the guitar was about 14, 15, And what it was, I was sitting here at my back door, opened the back door, and I heard this noise coming from the village. So I followed the noise down to the village, and it was the local parochial hall, and there was a band playing there. And these guys went on to become good friends of mine, and it was like this brilliant sound, drums, bass, and I was just hooked from that moment, It
was the same myself. I remember as a kid, my next door neighbour having his 18th birthday, and they were jamming in his garden, and that was the moment I remember first striking an interest in music and thinking I'm going to learn that thing.
Because when you see it like, in front of you, and you feel the impact and the, it's hard
to when you were, say, 15, did you say?
Yeah, 14, 15. And then I saw the next thing I saw Rory Gallagher play live.
Where was that?
That was in, where was it? It's Punchestown Racecourse,
Brilliant.
Way back in the day. And then I suppose my biggest musical influence would be when I heard Gary Moore play,
No doubt.
So I'm live and stuff. So that was, so it's gone on from then,
Mm-hmm. So getting your first guitar then, was it like the typical Christmas present story, or what?
It was like after I saw the guys in the village in the parochial hall playing, and I saw Rory Gallagher. I just came home and I pestered my mum and dad to buy me a guitar. And
all did.
Yeah. And it was my dad, who's the least musical in the family, who bought me. It was a battered second-hand Woolworths Top 20 guitar. But it got me started, it got me going, and until I was able to get the first proper guitar,
So what about sort of first bands then? Was there any standout, or was it like how many years of learning or playing away before that?
The first band I was in back here was a band called Steel Claw, a local band with some friends of mine, and I couldn't really play at the time, And then I decided, you've got to take this seriously. I've got to practice, So I started practicing like 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day. And then I decided, right, to do what I really want to do, go and, test the waters properly musically, I went to London.
Mm-hmm. What age were you when you went to London?
I was roughly about 20, 21, something like that, roughly like that.
I suppose before that, was there a memorable first gig or early couple of gigs or anything locally?
Locally, well,
there
was a few infamous gigs, because it was in the middle of the Troubles,
Yeah.
So a crowd of guys from Strabane going up to play in Drumore and Portadown, it was quite a hairy experience,
Yeah.
But we you know, we always stayed out of that sort of like any politics or any of that stuff. We were just there to play music, and we got on well with everybody, you know.
And in those days,
fantastic.
I suppose too, there was always talk about a lot of big acts in that wouldn't have played in Northern Ireland due to the Troubles. Did you notice much of an impact?
Yeah. What do you call it? Well, I suppose by the time I was able to go to gigs, bands were back playing, you know, because I was able to see bands like most of my favorite bands in this country, you know, in Dublin or Belfast. But I know back in the 70s and the 80s, it was really bad, early 80s, you know. But luckily, bands were back playing again here, you know, so I was able to see them, you know.
Cool. And then I suppose, just throughout that, bridging that gap then, I suppose it was you left school and you had ambitions as a musician, so it was over to London?
Over to London, and it was a bit of a daunting experience, you know, because you'd walk into to music shops and you'd hear guys playing, you go, man, these guys are amazing, you know, and they were all over the place. So you just got to knuckle down, and I ended up, I joined a few bands, felt my way, you know, and was in and out of a series of bands for years and years, and I just really...
There's Tyson in the background.
Tyson, now my doggy, my executive producer, I call him, you know, he's always about, you know. But it was, I loved my time in London, but I was ready to, when I did come home, I was ready to come home, you know, and it actually coincided, luckily enough, or, you know, not luckily enough, but unfortunately enough, should I say, with my mum becoming very ill. She developed motor neurone disease. Mm-hmm. So we ended up back here looking after her for the last year of her life. And that's when I decided to stay here, you know. I sort of looked around and went, wow, I actually feel good here. I love it, yeah. I mean, you couldn't pay me now to leave Tyrone, you know.
Especially for London. Like, I mean, it's quite a hectic place.
Every time I go back, I still go back there because I've still got lots of friends there and musicians I know. Every time I go back, I just can't wait to get out of there, you know?
Yeah.
Literally.
It's the chaos of the city.
Yeah.
So even within London, like you were gigging with bands, was there ever much recording done over there, albums put out? Or talk me through a couple of the bands.
I recorded a lot in London with, unfortunately, bands that never quite made it, you know. There was like almost stories, you know, and I suppose the closest I came to cracking it in the big time would have been with a band called Rhyme in the mid-2000s, you know, and we went over to America, and we were about to sign a deal with this huge promoter, a guy that promoted Simple Minds and Joan Jett, and, you know, so at the end of the last one, we got the album done, finished, and the singer walked out of the band, you know.
Typical singer.
So it was really like, it was quite, I don't know, but when I look back on it, I never look back and go, I wish that had happened. We probably would have ended up killing each other, you know. There was a reason why the singer left. But yeah, so it was a series of sort of like, I was always recording, and I worked a lot with a producer called George DeAngelis, and I helped him on various projects that he was on, you know, just quietly in the background playing guitar and stuff. And so I was always in and out of studios. There was some other bands maybe, but it was nothing that ever like made it incredibly big or anything, you know.
Yeah, well, you kept busy anyway. Like
I was always playing like all the time. I mean, I played every day. I played gigging, as I say, 3, 4, 5 nights a week, you know.
Was there ever, like, especially in London, was there ever like a particular favourite like residency type thing in any specific venue, do you recall? Or
yeah, we used to play a lot in a place called the Black Lion in Kilburn. This huge big sort of pub, and I remember we used to play there all the time, and we'd actually have residency every Sunday in a place called Biddy Mulligan's in Kilburn as well. You know, that's the time there was like loads of Irish around.
There's
there.
Always at Biddy Mulligan's. It's such a Irish bar name.
And we used to play every Sunday afternoon, and it was crazy. It was brilliant, like, you know. And the as I say, there was at that time. Northwest London, where it was full of Irish people, you know, full of Irish, Kiwis, Aussies as well, sort of party people, you know. Yeah. And sadly, as the years went on, the numbers of Irish people there in that area dwindled, and so the venues shut down, the pubs shut down. There wasn't as many places to play, you know. So my timing to come home was probably a good one.
Perfect timing for it. Yeah. What kind of music would you have been playing back then? Like, especially with the band you were saying, like in America and that. Like, what as a genre, was there ever? From a young age, was there a specific genre you wanted to head towards, and what way did that pan out, sort of thing?
Great question. My first love was blues and sort of blues rock. You know, people like Rory and Gary Moore and all. But as I went to London, I suppose I became more into the was bands around the time, I suppose, like Def Leppard, Bon Jovi, Whitesnake, that type of thing. So my music veered more towards that, and I really got into all that.
Cranked up the gain a little.
Yeah, I did about myself one of the brand new Marshalls, all the whole shebang, But yes, so the music, I got quite deeply into like songwriting at the time, and I concentrated rather than worrying too much about like trying to be the fastest gun in the West on the guitar. Like I started getting into songwriting, and so a lot of the stuff became slightly more mellow, but it always had a rock and blues sort of basis to it, And to this day, it does. Although I would say my new music is probably a little bit more adventurous. I dip into a few different styles. So with the current album, Fields of Redemption, there's bits of jazz in there. There's bits of like fusion. There's a bit of Irish traditional music in there. But it's all got a rock and blues sort of foundation to it all, and hopefully like it still sounds like one guitar player me,
That's it.
Yeah.
And so after moving home from London then and getting sort of stuck into that first album, what was the first album called?
Apparitions.
Apparitions, yes.
Yeah.
What was the kind of inspiration? Was this your first time really to thinking of yourself as a solo artist?
It was actually, yeah. And in the back of my mind, I don't know what, for years and years, I had this idea of going back home and recording a solo album of instrumental stuff in the room in my homestead where I learned to play guitar, and that's what I did.
So I suppose writing songs in like this house that you grew up in,
yeah,
it was after all those years in London, it was like a sort of a fresh start, but with like a nostalgic feel to it and bringing a lot of memories back. And
absolutely, yeah.
In what way would that have inspired?
Well, inspired. I suppose the room I recorded in was quite an old room, and it sort of brought me back like to what I was doing probably before I left, as far as like pure rock and pure blues,
Yeah.
But I dipped my toes in a few other sort of like waters there again, and like just little bits of jazz, little bits of this. But what helped me being writing songs for so many years, like, was that I structured the instrumentals in the way I would structure a song. Often, I'd have like an intro of what I would consider a verse, a chorus, like a middle late, but rather than the vocal doing the work, it would be the guitar, conveying the melodies.
But with them, just not to go too back on ourselves, but with those two solo albums being instrumental, you were talking about in the earlier days of songwriting. Would you have been into writing your own lyrics, or was it always instrumental?
I used to write a few lyrics, but not that many. I always believe that whoever's writing the songs should really be writing the lyrics.
Yeah.
My contribution to songwriting would be in terms of like the chords and even the melodies. Although I'm not a singer, I can hum a melody to a singer to sort of convey, like, when you try this melody over that part and stuff like that. But I would usually I think it's only right to leave the lyrics to the singer,
Yeah. It's a way that a lot of them seem to do it. Like, I mean, following with Ozzy passing away recently, I was watching a couple of clips of him in the studio, and the rest of the band would have just laid down tracks, and he kind of, like, a lot of their earlier versions of them songs were just him nearly like howling along to the music.
Yeah.
And then come back, take those melodies that he's and flow out of them naturally, and then come back and work on lyrics.
Absolutely. Often, like, I've seen some of the best singers I've worked with, just hum the melody and the lyrics will come. Very few singers that I've come across will come up with the lyrics first,
Yeah.
But I mean, I have met some singers who do it that way, or have a notebook and they'll do.
There's either or. Like, I mean,
it's whatever.
I've written a couple of songs over the years just with different groups, and it's kind of funny how you could write lyrics and then you're trying to sort of nearly force them in and like wedge them into a place.
Wedge them into song, like,
whereas it just feels more natural if you do just kind of hum something out. Take the melody and take
absolutely
it from there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of it just helps inspire that wee bit more, I suppose. So, when you recorded Apparitions, the first album, then was it a long process between recording it and getting it released? And I mean, what was there, like a specific event as well?
Recording it, I recorded it in 2019. It was released in 2020. So I mean, it was, again, but because it was the first album, I was feeling my way a lot, and I didn't know how long it would take me to do it. But it didn't take as certain as long as this album took, you know. But there was other reasons for this taking as long. But no, it was a fairly smooth process. But it was my first time releasing something myself, you know. So that was a huge learning curve in terms of how to do it. You know, you're finding your distributor, getting it on the different platforms. But even stuff like organising the recording process, organising musicians, because I was using session players, finding the right guys for the right tracks. Then the mix itself, which I went to Canada to mix at that time. So it was a hugely enjoyable experience as well as a hugely challenging one, you know.
Did you send it to Canada or did you go over yourself?
I actually, for the first album, I went to Canada.
What part?
What do you call it? Hamilton, Ontario. Yeah,
I was there recently myself. I actually played there as well myself.
Where
lovely
did you?
City.
In Hamilton?
In Hamilton, I can't remember. Don't ask me the name of the bar now off the top of my head. But we had such a good time. We were there in kind of Montreal and a couple of places.
I would guarantee I was in that bar.
Yeah,
it was a music bar. I was in there, so went there for 10 days to what's supposed to be 10 days to mix it, you know, but it ended up 6 months because we came back and we decided to tear it. I got on very well with James Ryan, who was mixing it for me, and we decided to go a bit deeper in the mix, redo a few things. And then I got Chris actually to co-produce Fields of Redemption with me, you know. And so, because I wanted to be a bit more expansive with the production and I needed another set of ears, you know, someone is a bit more objective, you know, and it's not so close to the music to actually help me, you know, spruce it up a bit, you know, polish it up.
Looking ahead now with following up Fields of Redemption, with the film coming out based on it, how's the process? How's it coming on in terms of process, or is it looking like is there a kind of a release date in the horizon?
Well, there's a release date, Friday 21st of November. You know,
pretty soon.
It's going to be self-released again, but I'm talking as well at the moment to some distributors, seeing what I can do with it. You know, it's a pretty unusual short film. It runs for about 48 minutes, but because it's basically 15 music videos with a narration in between, you know, I'm going to be curious to see how it's received, you know.
So in terms of with the concept of the album and the videos that went with it, this is kind of like could you say it's like a reimagined almost?
It's a reimagining of it. Although we did it at just after the album was finished, but it's got if you're listening to the album and you watch the film, you would say, well, okay, that's slightly different from what I would have imagined you were talking about on the album, which is great, but people can interpret whatever way they want, you know. But I just wanted to have another angle on the album, you know.
And then looking ahead, are you still writing music, working on
anything new? I've just started working again. I think the next album, this album was quite a varied album, you know, and I'm thinking for the next album, I might go even just really back to some basic blues rock and try and do my own sort of version of that, you know.
Nice.
And so I've started in that process. God knows when I'll finish it, you know, but
Brilliant.
It won't be 5 years, put it that way, you know.
Well, that's a good thing with the blues anyway. You can lay that foundation and then go as kind of crazy over the top with it.
Yeah.
Once you can add nearly anything to like a blues jam. So
exactly, you know. So so it's all good, you know.
Joe, thank you very much.
Cheers.